Hey guys, what's up? So the Nuggets lost, huh? Um, this is going to be a very Nugget-centric video. So this will be the last of my Nuggets content for a little while. I know a lot of you are Nuggets fans, as am I, because the Nuggets lost. So I'm going to be focusing on the other playoff teams remaining for the remainder of the playoffs, in all likelihood. And I'll come back around to them in the offseason, obviously. But most of my content has been Nugget centric lately, so I'm going to pivot to most of the other teams moving forward. But, I do want to get all my Nuggets thoughts out on this, in this video. So this is my second time recording it, so I'm going to probably be a little quicker than I was the first time. But, yeah, before we get into it, if you like the video, like, subscribe, comment, all that stuff. It really helps the video a lot and would mean a lot to me. Just, to get to monetization, we're about 125 subs off. I'd really appreciate it. So, anyway, with all that being said, all the YouTuber stuff out of the way, the Nuggets lost 98-90. And it was a game in which they were up 20 in the second half, and it's really disappointing. It's a disappointing loss because, Jokic and Murray scored a lot. They did a very good job in this game for the most part. Jokic finished with 34, 19, and 7. Murray had 35, 3, and 3. Both of them kind of ran out of gas towards the end, but also they got 16 points on 23 shots from MPJ, Aaron Gordon, and Kentavious Caldwell-Pope combined. And off the bench, the only player to have any points was Christian Brown. So, not good enough. Nowhere near good enough. They did not have a single double-digit scorer outside of those two, and they barely got to 20 points without those two. So, it's a disappointing loss, and I think the roster flaws of this team have become pretty clear. And I'll start with, starting five. Jokic and Murray you bring back. Murray did not look good this postseason, yes, but he was also injured, and he has a proven track record of being a high-level playoff performer. One blotch on your record, I'm fine bringing you back. Now, if you play bad again next postseason, we can start having some conversations. But in my mind, Murray is still the franchise cornerstone point guard moving forward for the foreseeable future. I don't see why you would split Jokic and Murray up. You lost to the Timberwolves. Also, before I get further into it, tip of the cap to the Timberwolves. If you're a Timberwolves fan, congratulations. You have a great team on your hands. You have a great player. You have, a phenomenal team moving forward. And this was a great series between two great teams. And I really enjoyed watching it. Outside of the Nuggets losing, obviously. But it just as a unbiased observer, it was a great series. And I think that you guys are likely to win the title. So, yeah, I just respect to the Timberwolves. I've seen nothing but good things between their fans and Nuggets fans, and I hope that keeps up because a good friendly rivalry is always nice to have. And if we could have a rivalry without the toxicity of, NBA Twitter, that'd be great. But anyway, back to the starting five. So those two are safe. Aaron Gordon, also safe, in my mind. Only 4 points in this one, 2 of 5 shooting, but also he had big games throughout these playoffs, and a lot of the times his role is not going to call for volume scoring. And this was one game where he just didn't get a lot of shots up. So it's not really a Aaron Gordon issue in my mind. I think he could have been better defensively this series, but offensively he was pretty good. Especially considering most of their game plan was, hey, let's leave Aaron Gordon open, and they had to start closing out on Aaron Gordon. So he did his job in my head. And then you have KCP and Michael Porter Jr. KCP played really poorly this postseason by his standards. He shot under 30% from three, I'm pretty sure, and only had 5 points in this one. 6 rebounds is pretty good for him, but 3 assists, 2 steals. Defensively, he was pretty solid in this postseason. He was worse against Ant than you would hope for, but also you kind of knew that coming in. Like in the preview I wrote up, I don't remember if I did a preview video, but in the preview I wrote up, I was like, Ant is too strong for him. Gordon is too slow for him. The only good matchup they had was Christian Braun. And that kind of bore itself out in this series because you saw Christian Braun get more and more minutes, and it was pretty necessary. You saw him close over Michael Porter Jr. Multiple times, and also pretty necessary. He was by far the best defender for Ant, and Ant in this game was bad. He shot 6-24 from the field. The leading scorers were Jaden McDaniels and Karl Anthony Towns. Those two were probably the best players in the game. For the Timberwolves, Ant did not have a good game. And a large part of that was because of Gordon, KCP, and especially Brown defensively. But at the end of the day, you bring KCP back if you can. Because he's a free agent this offseason, in all likelihood. He will decline that player option, I'm pretty sure. And he is likely going to get anywhere between 20 and 25 million. And I think you just kind of have to pay that. You just kind of have to let that rock. And you can probably trade him if he doesn't live up to that contract. But you're not going to get someone better than KCP on the trade market. And to lose KCP for nothing would be an idiotic and foolish move. Because Christian Braun, I don't think, is quite ready to take that step into being the starting two guard. And the next best answer besides Christian Braun on the roster would be Peyton Watson, and Peyton Watson is not a two guard. He is a, forward. He is a shot blocker. And speaking of Christian Braun, I'm sold on him as a bench piece moving forward. I'm sold on him as a rotation piece. I don't know if he ever gets to a starter level, but I do know that he is a playoff player. He has proven that this postseason and last postseason. I think he was the best bench player by far in this postseason, but sometimes it just doesn't work out with him on the floor, and that's why I don't know if he's a starter, because he's not a good enough shooter. He doesn't do the mid-range stuff that KCP does. And, he's nearly as good of a defender, I'd say. But just offensively, the gap is pretty big there still, at least when KCP is at his best, or at even his average. He just wasn't at that during this postseason. So that's a little frustrating. And then MPJ. MPJ is an interesting conundrum if you're the Nuggets, because on one hand, he played very, very well in the Lakers series, and I don't know if you win that series without MPJ. But on the other hand, you kind of need more shot creating in the starting lineup. You need more shot creating just on the roster in general. You need secondary shot creators. Your best ball handler off the bench outside your ball Barry could not be Reggie Jackson. It could not be Reggie Jackson. And it would be foolish if they didn't make some changes to address that, because a lot of the issues caused by the Timberwolves defense was because of their ball pressure, and their ball pressure was mostly against Jamal Murray. It got to the point where we were having Aaron Gordon bring the ball up the floor, and Aaron Gordon's cool as a ball handler sometimes. He did stuff like that in Orlando, but there's a reason that he shifted roles once he got to a winning team. He can be a tertiary shot creator, but he can't be your secondary ball handler in your starting lineup. And yeah, if you're going to address the depth thing with a trade, MPJ makes the most sense for a trade. Just because his salary is big enough to get multiple contracts in for him, and also he is probably the weak link of that starting five. Defensively, he had a underwhelming series against Minnesota, and it's the first time I can say that in a while. He's mostly been a good defender since he came back from his third back surgery, but he was bad in this series. And this is likely a team that you have to plan to go against again, and you need better than 3-12 from the field, 7 points. You need better than, I think it was 10 of 34 in the last 4 games. You need better than what he gave you in this series outside of the first half of game 1. In a 7-game series, he had one like really standout game. That's not good enough, and he's getting max money. So in my mind, he's the one you move on from if you move on from someone in the starting five. I'm not calling for a MPJ trade, but I would understand if an MPJ trade happened. I think you can bring him back and run it back if you address the depth piece stuff in free agency. I am mostly out on drafting somebody. I would like to see them trade that pick for a contributor. This is a pipe dream. If this player were to become available, multiple teams would outbid them for Alex Caruso. But if you could get an Alex Caruso type, that would be great. I asked some people around the league and around the media sphere, hey, what do you think Alex Caruso's trade value would be? And a lot of the answers I heard were like the value of 2 mid to late firsts. So if they really like Julian Strawther and you can throw a couple of picks in, you might be able to get something done. Or if they really like Peyton Watson, stuff like that. Because the thing that they lost with Bruce Brown was not necessarily good bench play, because the bench was good in this series. They were not good in the Lakers series, but they were good in this series. They lost someone who has the capability of being the sixth starter, basically, because Bruce in this series would close over MPJ or KCP in nearly all of the games. Christian Brown closed for MPJ in a couple of the games, but I don't see Christian Brown as that sixth starter. Bruce would be great to have back, but I think the Raptors are going to accept that team option and trade him. Maybe you trade MPJ to the Raptors and they get another Porter Jr., huh? Or another Porter brother. But I think it's just kind of a rough situation to be in. Looking at it, trying to find room for improvement, because there definitely are avenues for improvement, but the new CBA makes it incredibly difficult to get a lot of depth pieces in if you have a very, top-heavy team like the Nuggets are. And the starting five was like one of the best units in basketball this season, so it's not like that bench unit isn't good or isn't worth it, or that starting five isn't good or isn't worth it, but also that comes at a certain price, and that price is a cheap bench unit. It doesn't necessarily have to be a bad bench unit, but it is going to be a cheap one. It's mostly going to be veteran minimum contracts and people you draft. And Christian Brown, I don't think will get a ton better. I do think there is some room for improvement offensively, but I don't see him improving a ton. I just don't think that that's the sort of player he will be. I don't think he'll be a Bruce Brown sort of player where he's creating shots for you. He's, running pick and roll. I don't see that in the cards for him. You want a shooting leap from either him or Peyton Watson, because I don't anticipate them trading either of them. But it's incredibly difficult to go out there and have a bench lineup with 2 non-shooting wings. That's just very hard to do, and I don't think it's reasonable to expect to win with that sort of configuration. There's a reason Justin Holiday got a lot of run in this series, and it's because he could shoot and Peyton Watson could not. So I would try and get a shooting leap from one of Christian Brown or Peyton Watson. Zeke Naji is someone you bet on, and it didn't pan out. He signed a 4-year, $32 million extension last offseason, and it did not work out. He had the worst of all qualified players who played like enough minutes to qualify, had the worst on-off differential per cleaning the glass of anyone in the league at a negative 26. So he played pretty poorly, and he doesn't do much well, and you need a better bench big, because DeAndre Jordan and Zeke Naji are not backup centers, even in the regular season. You need, just someone who's good. You need either a better roll man, or you need someone who can kind of do post-hub stuff, like playmakers sort of stuff, because what makes the bench unit difficult a lot of the time is Jamal Murray is the stagger. And the entire roster is built of Jokic ball players, not Jamal Murray players. And a lot of them are not complementary to Jamal Murray's game. He has not had a good roll man in years. I don't even remember who the last one would really be. You could do some of the same stuff that they did with Jokic, with Mason Plumlee when he was here, but outside of that, like, I can't think of a good backup center that they've had. So I would try and figure out who that is, identify who that is, get them in the building. You know, if you have to trade for someone, trade for someone. Good bench big is a concern because you need at least an innings eater so that Jokic and Jamal and all of them are not so fucking tired in the, you know, last 20 games of the season when you're really gunning for the 1 seed and then in the playoffs, because a lot of it came down to, hey, Jokic and Jamal are tired. Jokic and Jamal have put everything into the series. Jokic and Jamal have gunned it. And it just didn't end up working. And then you need someone better than Reggie Jackson as your bench ball handler. You need someone who's a better secondary shot creator than Reggie Jackson. That's just kind of it. It is what it is. You needed to address the bench. But outside of that, yeah. I would look to trade the pick. I would look to improve through free agency. I would look to potentially trade Michael Porter Jr. for depth. But if not, run it back, basically. So yeah, if you guys liked this video, like, subscribe, comment, all that jazz. And I will see you guys later. Bye.